Have you ever wondered what happens when justice finally catches up with those who abuse their power? Today we're diving deep into a shocking story that reveals the harsh consequences of racism, recklessness, and disrespect, right in the heart of a somber moment meant for honor and remembrance. Welcome to Dream Tales, your go-to channel for eye-opening real-life stories that make you think, feel, and question the world around us. If this is your first time here, don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more gripping tales like this one. Now, here's a question for you. How should society handle someone who threatens a military general during a funeral, especially when racial hatred is involved? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Now let's get to the story. Recently, a police officer driven by racial prejudice did something so outrageous it shook an entire community. During a military general's funeral, a solemn ceremony meant to honor a hero's sacrifice, this officer pulled out his gun and pointed it directly at the general's family and comrades. The act was not only illegal but deeply disrespectful and racist. The court didn't take this lightly. After a lengthy trial filled with emotional testimonies and undeniable evidence, this cop was sentenced to life in prison. This decision marks a powerful moment in the fight against racism and abuse of power, but it also raises many questions about the state of law enforcement, respect for our military, and how justice is served in difficult times. Why does this story matter? Because it's about more than just one man or one bad decision. It's a reflection of the ongoing struggle against racism within institutions meant to protect us. It's about honoring those who serve our country with dignity. And it's about demanding accountability when those sworn to uphold the law instead choose hate and violence. So stick around as we explore every angle of this case: the background, the trial, the impact, and the lessons we can learn moving forward. Trust me, this is a story you won't want to miss. To truly understand the gravity of what happened, we need to set the scene at the funeral where everything unfolded. The funeral was for a highly respected military general who had served the country with distinction for over 3 decades. Known for his bravery, leadership, and commitment to his troops, this general was a symbol of honor and sacrifice. His passing was mourned not only by his family and close friends but by the entire military community and many civilians alike. The funeral was held in a large public venue with many attendees, including high-ranking military officials, local leaders, and members of the community who came to pay their respects. The atmosphere was solemn and respectful, a moment to remember a hero and reflect on the values he stood for: loyalty, courage, and unity. However, amid this somber occasion, tension suddenly shattered the peace. The officer in question, a member of the local police force, attended the funeral. While the details about why he was there vary, some say he was off duty, others suggest he was providing security. The shocking part was what happened next. Witnesses recall seeing the officer act aggressively. Without warning, he drew his weapon and pointed it at the military general's family and attendees. The gesture wasn't just a reckless display of force, it was laced with racial hostility. This moment instantly turned a ceremony of mourning into one of fear and outrage. The cop's actions stunned everyone present. Some people froze in disbelief, others quickly tried to de-escalate the situation. Military personnel nearby immediately reacted, confronting the officer and securing the area to prevent further violence. Local law enforcement quickly intervened, and the officer was taken into custody. The community was left shaken. How could someone entrusted with public safety act with such blatant disrespect and hatred in a place dedicated to honoring a national hero? News of the incident spread rapidly, igniting public outrage and calls for justice. The fact that this happened during a funeral, an event that symbolizes respect and unity, made the act even more egregious. To understand the full picture, it's important to look at the man behind the badge, the police officer who shocked everyone by pointing a gun at a military general's funeral. This officer had been serving in the local police department for several years. On the surface, he was considered a regular member of the force, but digging deeper reveals a more complicated story. Reports surfaced that he had a history of complaints related to racial bias and aggressive behavior. Several former colleagues and community members described him as someone who often clashed with others, especially when race was involved. In fact, some internal investigations had flagged concerns about his conduct, but these issues were never fully addressed or resulted in serious disciplinary action. This raises questions about accountability within the police force and whether warning signs were ignored. Before the incident at the funeral, the officer had no major criminal record, but there were rumors and whispers about his attitude and behavior that painted a troubling picture. His social media accounts showed posts with racially insensitive comments and symbols that alarmed civil rights groups once they came to light during the investigation. Family and friends offered contrasting views. Some said he was a troubled man struggling with personal issues, while others admitted they were surprised by the extent of his actions. Whatever the case, the fact remained that this officer's actions went far beyond poor judgment. They were a stark example of deep-seated racism manifesting in a violent and dangerous way. The police department faced significant scrutiny following the incident. How could an officer with such a background be allowed to remain in service? This case sparked a renewed debate about police hiring practices, training, and the urgent need to root out racism within law enforcement agencies. Understanding this officer's history is crucial because it shows that this wasn't just an isolated incident. It was the culmination of unchecked behavior and systemic failures, and it had devastating consequences at a moment when respect and dignity should have prevailed. Now, let's dive into the moment that shocked everyone present at the military general's funeral. The funeral had been proceeding with the usual solemnity and respect. Family members, fellow soldiers, and community leaders gathered to honor a man who had devoted his life to serving the nation. The atmosphere was heavy with grief, yet filled with pride for the general's legacy. Then, out of nowhere, the peace was shattered. Eyewitnesses report that the police officer, who was either off duty or present in a limited security role, suddenly drew his firearm and pointed it directly at the general's family and military attendees. His actions were not provoked by any immediate threat but appeared deliberate and fueled by racial animosity. People present described a moment of disbelief and fear. Some froze, unable to process what was happening, while others reacted quickly to intervene and protect those targeted. The military personnel nearby immediately stepped forward to disarm and restrain the officer. The scene quickly became chaotic. Some witnesses say they heard gasps and cries, while others scrambled to move loved ones out of harm's way. The officer's aggressive display was terrifying, especially in a setting meant to be a sanctuary of respect. Authorities arrived on the scene shortly after, and the officer was taken into custody without further violence. The military general's family was understandably shaken, their grief compounded by this act of hostility and disrespect during a time when they should have been supported by their community. This incident sent shockwaves not just locally but nationally. The image of a police officer, someone who is supposed to uphold law and protect citizens, threatening a decorated military leader during his funeral was a powerful symbol of deeper societal issues. News outlets quickly covered the event, highlighting the racial tensions that underpinned the officer's actions and the widespread condemnation that followed. The story sparked heated discussions about police conduct, racism, and respect for the military. Following the shocking incident at the funeral, the wheels of justice quickly began to turn. The police officer was immediately arrested and faced serious charges, including assault with a deadly weapon, intimidation, and hate crime enhancements due to the racial motivations behind his actions. The trial that followed drew widespread attention. It became a high-profile case, symbolizing the broader fight against racism and abuse of power within law enforcement. Prosecutors worked tirelessly to build a case, relying on eyewitness testimony, video footage, and digital evidence, including the officer's past social media posts, to prove intent and racial bias. Witnesses took the stand to describe the tense moments at the funeral and the fear they experienced. Members of the military community and the general's family also testified, sharing how the incident deeply affected them emotionally and psychologically. The defense tried to argue that the officer acted out of confusion or stress, attempting to downplay the racial aspect and suggesting there was no intent to harm. However, the overwhelming evidence painted a different picture. This was not an accident but a deliberate, hateful act. Throughout the trial, expert witnesses on police conduct and racial bias weighed in, explaining how such behavior undermines public trust and damages community relations. The judge made clear the seriousness of the charges and the need for accountability. After several weeks of testimony and legal arguments, the jury deliberated carefully. The verdict was unanimous, guilty on all charges. The court then moved to sentencing. In the sentencing hearing, the judge emphasized that the officer's actions were a betrayal of his duty and an attack on the values society holds dear, especially respect for those who serve in the military. Given the severity of the crime and its racial motivations, the judge handed down a life sentence. This verdict sent a strong message. Racism and violence, especially by those sworn to protect, will not be tolerated and will carry the heaviest consequences. The day the verdict was announced marked a pivotal moment, not only for the military general's family but also for the entire community and nation. When the judge sentenced the racist police officer to life in prison, the courtroom was filled with a mixture of relief, sorrow, and powerful emotions. The sentence was seen as a firm statement against hatred and abuse of power within law enforcement. Legal experts praised the decision, calling it a landmark ruling that sets a precedent for holding officers accountable for racially motivated crimes. Many emphasized that this was a clear message: no one is above the law regardless of their badge or uniform. Public reaction was swift and intense. Social media exploded with comments both supporting and criticizing the verdict, but the majority hailed it as justice served. Community leaders, civil rights organizations, and military representatives released statements applauding the outcome. The military general's family expressed gratitude for the verdict, saying it brought some measure of closure to their grief. They also highlighted the importance of continued vigilance against racism and violence in all forms. However, the incident and its aftermath also exposed deep wounds. Protests erupted in some areas, demanding broader police reform and systemic changes to address racism within law enforcement institutions. These protests were largely peaceful but passionate, reflecting widespread frustration over repeated incidents of racial bias and abuse. At the same time, some critics argued the sentence was too harsh or politically motivated. These contrasting opinions revealed how divided the country remains on issues of race, justice, and policing. For the local police department, the case prompted an internal review and promises of stricter policies and improved training. Yet many community members called for more transparent and concrete actions to rebuild trust. Ultimately, this sentencing became more than just a legal decision. It sparked important conversations about respect for the military, equality under the law, and the need for accountability in public service. This case is not an isolated incident. It reflects a larger, troubling reality about racism within law enforcement and its impact on society. Across the country and even around the world, there have been numerous reports and studies revealing systemic racial bias in police forces. From disproportionate stops and arrests of people of color to excessive use of force, these patterns erode public trust and deepen divisions in communities. When an officer, a symbol of justice and protection, acts out with racial hatred, it not only harms the direct victims but also shakes the foundation of the social contract. For military members who dedicate their lives to protecting a nation's freedoms, being threatened by someone who represents the law is a profound betrayal. The military holds a unique place in society. It is a symbol of unity, sacrifice, and patriotism, ideals that transcend racial and political lines. The funeral of a decorated general is meant to be a moment of respect, free from conflict or hate. The fact that racism reared its ugly head in this sacred space shows just how pervasive the issue remains. This incident also highlights how difficult it can be for institutions to police themselves. Despite prior warnings about the officer's behavior, the system failed to act decisively before tragedy struck. This points to a broader need for reform, including better training on racial sensitivity, stronger oversight, and accountability measures. Public trust is fragile. When police officers are involved in racist acts, it undermines confidence in the entire justice system. Communities affected by these incidents often feel marginalized and fearful, leading to calls for change. Many activists and experts argue that real progress requires systemic transformation, addressing not just individual behavior but the structures that enable discrimination. This includes revisiting recruitment, training, disciplinary processes, and community engagement. The life sentence handed down in this case serves as both a warning and a beacon of hope. It shows that justice can prevail when society demands it, but it also reminds us of how much work remains. This case, while tragic and shocking, offers important lessons about accountability, justice, and the work still needed to combat racism within law enforcement. First, it shows that no one is above the law, not even those entrusted with our safety. The life sentence sends a clear message that racist behavior and threats of violence will have serious consequences. This is crucial for rebuilding trust in the justice system. Second, the case highlights the importance of addressing warning signs early. The officer involved had a troubling history that was overlooked or dismissed. Police departments must take complaints seriously, conduct thorough investigations, and take swift action to prevent such dangerous behavior from escalating. Third, the incident underscores the need for comprehensive training on racial sensitivity and implicit bias for all law enforcement officers. Understanding the impact of racism and learning how to serve all community members fairly must be a priority. Beyond the police force, this case reminds us all of the power of community vigilance and activism. Public outrage and pressure were key in ensuring the case received the attention it deserved. Citizens must continue to hold institutions accountable and demand transparency. Moreover, the respect owed to military service members, especially during solemn occasions like funerals, should be non-negotiable. Protecting these moments from hate and violence honors not only the fallen but the values they stood for. Looking ahead, reforms are essential. These include revisiting hiring practices, increasing oversight, and fostering open dialogue between police and communities. Only through sustained efforts can we hope to prevent future tragedies. As we wrap up this story, it's clear that the sentencing of the racist cop to life in prison sends a powerful message. Justice can prevail, even in the face of hatred and betrayal. This case reminds us that accountability is crucial, especially for those entrusted with protecting our communities. It also highlights the ongoing challenges we face in confronting racism within law enforcement and society at large. The bravery of the military general and the dignity of his funeral deserved respect and honor, not threats and violence. Thank you for joining us on Dream Tales to explore this important story. If you found this video insightful, please take a moment to like it, share it with your friends and family, and subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories that matter. We also want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this case? How do you think law enforcement can better address issues of racism? Drop your opinions and experiences in the comments below. Let's keep this important conversation going. Remember, staying informed and engaged is one of the best ways we can all contribute to positive change. Together, we can demand justice, promote respect, and build a society where incidents like this become a thing of the past. Once again, thank you for watching Dream Tales. Until next time, take care and stay hopeful.